Speaker, and I move. I ask the Majority Leader to second.
You know, Mr. Speaker, I beg to second. Speaker, you know, in a motion like this, where all members would like to participate and say something, it's very special, we'll try and make it short. Mr. Speaker, this gentleman that we speak about today has a very checkered career. His life, everybody has spoken about the Speaker, is that he was soft-spoken. And many times he never shouted above anybody's voice. He was soft-spoken, but whatever he said, as a Speaker, you would listen and you would definitely respect. At the age of 80, we've lost him, in my view, early. We needed for him to be there. But, Mr. Speaker, in Muslim religion, that's God's timing. And also in any religion, we leave that to God. One of the very first pastoralists to rise in the ranks of provincial administration was Yusuf Haji, very young. And actually, Mr. Speaker, one of the most educated, even at that time, were trained, well-trained. And coming from a place where he didn't have very many to support him in terms of tribe, he excelled in relating to other people everywhere he went. And that was one of the biggest contributions, one of the biggest assets, Mr. Speaker, of his character, is that he then learned to operate in any setting, including any community where he went to. And so that in itself tells you what kind of person that Yusuf Haji is. But Mr. Speaker, the reason why we have a special tribute, a moment of tribute for Yusuf Haji, and I don't know whether I can be heard. All right. Is that, Mr. Speaker, while a lot of us appreciate the way that our Muslim brothers and sisters do their funerals, Mr. Speaker, and conclude so quickly, while we admire that, it also does not give time for closure. And Mr. Speaker, people would like to have time to speak about a person and mourn that person longer. And so, Mr. Speaker, this is why this special sitting is important. Because we have already buried Yusuf Haji, but now you are giving us an opportunity, the House is giving us an opportunity for that closure, for us as friends, for us as people who have grown with him, to then eulogize this great guy, this great man. And so, Mr. Speaker, that is one of the reasons why we have this session today. The other reason, Mr. Speaker, is that in this particular tradition, the Islamic tradition, it is traditional to ask, like we were asked today at his residence, to ask, is there anyone who owes anything to Yusuf Haji? And so this is a good forum, Mr. Speaker. It's a good forum then to say, no, like me personally, he owes me nothing, and I don't know who in this house that Yusuf Haji would have owed anything. Even forgiveness, he owes me nothing. In fact, Mr. Speaker, in my career as a politician, my most difficult times as a politician, Yusuf Haji was the provincial commissioner in Rift Valley. But he was so sympathetic to me because I was so young, and I was naive, Mr. Speaker, basically at the time when the system did not allow for questioning anything, that I was there, Mr. Speaker, you know, asking things which were not supposed to be asked. Like, Mr. Speaker, when I was expelled from Kanu in 1988, Mr. Speaker, my first election, Yusuf Haji was there, but he was so sympathetic, and he would tell me, you know, go slowly, kijana, go slowly. I mean, I didn't know what that meant. I had just finished graduate school. I had a master's degree. I thought I would question everything. But, Mr. Speaker, that was not to be. And so when I was eventually expelled, and Mr. Speaker, you know, you need to understand that I was expelled the same year I was elected. So it's not like I had a long time to serve. Expelled from the only party in the country. And Mr. Speaker, the truth is, you become a pariah when you're expelled. And Yusuf Haji was the administrator, but that moment of victimizing you, he didn't do that. And so I was able then, Mr. Speaker, to organize myself and get out of the country without much harassment. And so, Mr. Speaker, I just want to say that here is a man who had the authority even to order my arrest. He had the authority to do whatever he wanted to do, but did not use that against some of us. Also, Mr. Speaker, during that time, the Pokot community had been harassed very much in terms of military operations. Some of you are hearing about military operations now. This is something that was used quite a bit on the Pokot community. And Yusuf Haji, who was the PC at the time, it really handled this thing in a very humane way. And although a lot of times the leaders were arrested, but he handled it in a very humane way. And so I remember him as a man who could actually give time to leaders and listen to leaders, even if those of us were branded badly at the time. And so, in respect of the question whether he owes me anything, absolutely nothing. And except gratitude. And Mr. Speaker, every time that we had issues, even in the personal lives, and you spoke to Yusuf Haji, he listened to you, he gave you advice which was fatherly. The other thing I must say is that he really gave his family a very good life. He gave his family education, his children. And which is like Nyachai, and we spoke about Nyachai in Nyachai yesterday, the day before, yesterday. And Mr. Speaker, these were very young people. Nyachai being a PC at 32 years old, those are very young people. And yet, Mr. Speaker, they were able to operate under those conditions. And so Yusuf Haji and his peers at that time were very well prepared and very well trained. And so one thing which is thankful is that he prepared his family for life, and therefore he prepared his people as well, the people of Garissa and generally the people of Northeastern. So he's a man who cared beyond his own family and cared beyond his own small constituency. The Speaker, one of the last examples I'll give is, and I did the one that the minority leader has said, in 1997. In 1997, Mr. Speaker, I came back to Kano, and I ran for the Member of Parliament for Kacheliba constituency under Kano. Those days, the nominations were still Mlolongo, and those days, Mlolongo nominations, the Speaker could go either way. And in those days, you are a DO. I think you realize the DOs were also presiding officers, and the DCs, I think, were the returning officers. And so, no, the returning officers and then the other ones presiding officers. I don't know which one was bigger than which. But mine was unique because the late former president had a candidate he liked very much at the time. It was called Peter Nangole. And he was an assistant minister, and I was running against him. And Haji was the PC. And Mr. Speaker, when I won that nomination, it was a problem for the country and for the party because I was not supposed to win that nomination. So the DO, Mr. Speaker, of Kacheliba, you called the DC and said, there's a problem. I said, what's the problem? The assistant minister has been beaten. And the DC said, wait for me here, don't do anything, don't announce. Let me call the PC. And guess who was the PC? Yusuf Haji. And so the DC now calls the PC, and the PC says, wait, don't announce, let me call the president. And Mr. Speaker, In the end, when the PC now goes to see the president, and the president was told that there was a problem in Kachaliba, the former president, the President Moi. It so happened that PC Haji and my good friend Lotodo were together, and they spoke very nicely of me, Mr. Speaker. They said, "At kijana si mbaya sana." In Kiswahili, meaning I was not a very bad young man, and which is true up to today, Mr. Speaker. I'm not a very bad young man. And so, Mr. Speaker, he was a PC, but he was a bit soft, and he understood how to put things. And so the result was announced, and the rest, Mr. Speaker, was history. I served as the MP for Kachaliba for the next 15 years, non-stop. So it was important that I speak very highly of a man who spoke very softly, but very strong and very, very powerful. What else can I say about this gentleman, Mr. Speaker? Apart from being a father figure, he also, Mr. Speaker, supported the political system. And I think, Mr. Speaker, if you look at our president today, Uhuru Kenyatta, if you look at the whole of yesterday, Mr. Speaker, dealing with the situation with Nyachai, and then later in the evening dealing with the situation with Yusuf Haji, Mr. Speaker, what we saw was a very emotional setting. And because Yusuf Haji stood very true and very faithful to the system and to the president, the current president, he was a father figure to him, and just like to me and others. And so, Mr. Speaker, we speak of a man who was true when he was in power, and even, Mr. Speaker, as a nominated member of parliament when he came. And you know, nominated members of parliament do not have much power, Mr. Speaker, but he was consulted more. And I think that's what led to his being elected to Ijara and then the following election. And so, Mr. Speaker, we give this opportunity for us to bring closure to losing a great friend and a great mentor and a man who stayed true, like my minority was saying, true to truth. One time, Mr. Speaker, when we were discussing the formula, he's used very, very strong words. And he said, "I'd rather die than to compromise." Those are the words he used. It was very, very strong. And so, Mr. Speaker, for a man like that, it's a great loss. And yet, again, as my friend Minority Leader said, there is probably more where that came from, that stock. And so we wish the people of Garissa God's grace and protection, his family, especially, Mr. Speaker, some of his boys whom we know that they may be, Mr. Speaker, continue to keep the family together, and may God rest his soul in eternal peace. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I second.
Honorable Senators, I now